Awesome. Here we are.
Here we are.
Here we are. First podcast.
Mm-hmm.
The Original Intelligence podcast. This is really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How you feeling about this topic and this time of, kind of reality and what we can do to sort of improve the dialogue around this particular topic?
Well, I think it starts with the connection between nature and technology and where we're steering that. So, for example, discerning what's healthy for us and what's not, between how much tech we consume in a day and how much nature we consume in a day. And it's ironic because I feel like with nature there's never enough of it that you can consume in terms of time and energy that you share with it. So when I say consume, I mean sharing of your energy, going out for a walk, sitting and watching the birds, looking into the sky, stargazing, moon gazing, sun gazing, at the right times, planting your feet firmly in all different types of elemental terrain. Those are the really healthy, good components for us that I think are taken for granted, because it's easy to look at a screen and it's easy to fall behind watching technology because it's entertaining.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting how you say that, because I find myself quite often being caught up in that technological space where I'm spending a bit too much time, say, staring at a screen or flicking through my phone, or sort of stuff that's it's almost like it's meant to take up time as opposed to really create quality experiences in my life. I find that often the most quality filled experiences that I can remember and that seem to leave a mark on me are the ones that are involved in something that has to do with being outside, something that has to do with being with connections, with people, good people.
Why do you think you might procrastinate and not do it then if you spend... Because I agree with you, I'm also in that category of spending more time in front of technology than necessarily going outside because the weather is whatever.
Well, it's a good point you make. Weather's a big reason, I think, for a lot of people to stay indoors.
There's always something, yeah.
Yeah, and I think one part of it too is that a lot of people were raised in a city or an urban atmosphere, or like in the suburbs or things like that. Well,
there's a lot of people out there that need nature, and there's a lot of people out there that feel like they don't necessarily need it as much because we have our minds that have invented amazing things for us, including homes, including walls and that kind of thing.
Well, that could be one of the reasons why people don't spend as much time outside, is that they've spent so much of their money and their time to pay for walls,
mm-hmm.
as opposed to, for gardens or for things that are alive. And,
mm-hmm.
If we invested more of our time in things that are not screens or, technologically driven systems, we may feel more inclined to spend that time outside rather than enjoying the sort of fruits of our labors.
Mm-hmm.
If the fruits of our labors are walls and screens and tech and acquisitions.
Well, it becomes more mind than body then. The mind versus material spirituality, for example, looks like, creating an online spiritual course and then, say, creating an outside spiritual garden,
Mm-hmm.
And you can do both, and both are great, even if it's not something that's spiritual, as long as it's benevolent kind of thing, because that's what spirituality is to me. It's pointing to that benevolence that's in all of us that we can trust in, because we're divine at the core. But with nature and spending time out there, you get access to everything that you are, which is all of the elements that make up your body: air, water, fire, earth, ether, all of it. And it makes you more whole egoistic because you're in this body. Why would you not want to take care of it? And it's the same thing as, sitting in front of a computer all day and just using your mind. We don't necessarily need to take care of your body as much because you're doing things, you're almost forgetting to eat, you're forgetting to go to the toilet even sometimes. And it's like, well, my mind will figure that out. And eventually, come the end of the day, we're knackered and drained, and it's like, well, now I'll do those things for myself. But it's like the tech came first, and I feel like that's a bit of a difficult thing to want to pass on to younger generations, because they will pick it up, and that'll be something that's hard to see, hard to watch, that being passed on to your children, that they put tech first before they, put their earthly body first.
Or spirit, for that matter. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting how that's the case. How we'd put tech before spirit or physical. Has a lot to do with the way we've created our world. I find that the most readily available option for me to remember to come back to body is remembering that the original intelligence are those things that you just talked about. The earth, the elementals, the natural.
And the joy and experience that can be had through them. The amount of joy that I get just from a bird coming close to my ear, the sound its wing makes, for example, or the colours of the sun when it's in between the sky and a tree, for example. These little things, they mean more than I could say, because the feeling doesn't come with words, but it's an experiential joy that's present, and it's more organic than the joy that I might feel on technology, when there's the dopamine fixes of, say, a notification that people have liked or commented on something that you created. There's a joy in that. But it's more of a personal joy than it is an holistic system joy, where you're out in the presence of lots of different life, including little squirrels, and if you have a back garden that has those kind of things, it may be lions in your back garden, who knows, but whatever it is, there's some life there, and it's communicating with you, sending you
in a big way. I think people don't
messages.
even realize just how much communication is going on there. Like on a subtle level, if the original intelligence is the elementals, let's say, for instance, both the masculine and the feminine version of those. So, the earthly mother being one aspect of them and the heavenly father being the other aspect of them. There's an inherent intelligence that is building all of what we are, all of how we think, all of how we function. Outside of cultural imprinting, we have these basic systems that are in place, that when we have proper paradigmatic cultural imprinting, we can suddenly have this extremely powerful, beautiful experience of life that's by very nature, because we are connected directly to divine.
There's an experiential space of joy, as I was saying, to technology as well. It just looks very different than what nature looks like, in my opinion, because
it doesn't feel the same to people, to humans and stuff.
It's automatically less light. You're looking at a screen with a smaller frequency. You're
absolutely a much narrower frequency band, and a hertz frequency, and all that kind of stuff that's typically static as opposed to dynamic, like that which would be a sun or the experience of being under a canopy, a forest canopy. The different kinds of vibrations that come from animals and trees and all these other life forms.
But that doesn't mean that when you're using technology, you shouldn't use it with the same care as you would with nature, in my opinion. Treat it as its tool that it is. But put your body first is something I need to remember myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's nobody that's... hopefully this conversation doesn't sound like it's a treatise against technology, because that's not... We're the very nature of this podcast
balance.
is
it's
using...
the divine union of those... Divine union.
Yeah. if
Unio
you,
Divina. So that's the divine balance between nature and technology, which is coming, and we already know that. It's been prophesized as a dystopian one where technology takes over, or nature takes over, either way. But it can be a balanced utopia, in my opinion. It doesn't have to be all tech, it doesn't have to be all nature, where we go back to whatever we were before we had technology. It can be a balanced one.
Yeah, I'm on board with that, and there's something to be said about being able to use all the tools that we have at our disposal, at our convenience, to be able to further our interaction with life itself, the way that we modify and modulate and things like that. Like both you and I have been exposed to all sorts of different really cool ideas, some of which are possibly trending into sci-fi categories, but it's hard to know or draw a line sometimes between what is actually sci-fi and what is real. How people like you and I have this sort of innate sense that there's far more to this reality than we are ever given any kind of credit for, like off-planet life, all sorts of different kinds of life that's here on the planet itself. So for us to be able to understand how to interact in a living reality that has so much variety of let's just say, for lack of a better word, like different races that are from different planets that have different types of genetic and technological variables, and so it's like the ratio.
Like even the fungi, we don't know exactly where it comes from. Its DNA is like some fungi we know, but
right. I mean, it's like talk about an original intelligence. Like fungi is one of those races of being that have been here for so long and are so dynamic and are so critical to ecologies that without them, ecologies just don't exist the same way. They can't. It's like you're taking away a particular kind of bodily function from them because they were here and things evolved from those being here to begin with. And some might say the same about certain kinds of technology or certain kinds of biology in the way that humans are. Like there's something to be said. Maybe there is a source type of basic technology, like say the moon or something, if the moon is technology, that is forming a certain kind of foundation for the way that humans operate. And so we would thus, evolve alongside that sort of bedrock
that's right.
technology, right? So it's kind of like, what are the things that we do with what we actually are so that we can experience our best and most holistic selves? Nature has been given a bit of a not bad reputation, but it hasn't been nurtured.
Well, it's been left on the sidelines.
Yeah, in a way that's almost like it's being
that
disregarded.
Fights back eventually. We know that. We've seen it time and time again in our history.
Right. There's always that sort of earth-based group that's sort of butting heads against the sort of,
there's always
say, urban-based
one
group
against another. Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing is that both deserve.
It doesn't have to be that way.
No,
it can be a divine union.
It is already a divine union, and it's kind of like a quarreling couple rather than, a very peaceful and very respectful adult relationship between those two factions. Because if we in our urban settings and the way that we do urban design and urban like building creation and all these other things, if we were to take into consideration more of what nature needs and what nature can do, even like just growing up sides of buildings or, having massive, beautiful, intricate water networks that, flow inside buildings and all this other stuff. Like we could have some of the most fundamentally amazing design challenges, like architecturally and engineering wise, that we could have so much fun putting together alongside the elementals, not just creating these concrete jungles that are so that basically they're almost like pairing spaceships with, an ecosystem.
Creating a beautiful mansion there along with a secret or a sacred garden. And the mansion is more for its, like a house that I would want to build is more for what it represents. Each room represents something to me. And can be a sacred altar space for whatever you go in there to use it for. And then the same can be said for the garden. You can have spaces in the garden that you go to every single day that mean something. Prayer, for example, meditation, for example, a wishing well of water to connect with that element, a fire pit to connect with the transformation of fire, the way to live as a common unit with nature and with technology, because with technology, for example, that crystal and the technology's mechanism is allowing for that, is sending that communication that's needed between you, the person using the technology, and between the technology and its function that you're asking it to do. And the same can be said about, living in that kind of holistic space all the time. That can be that divine union.
The divine union that I'm very curious about, because that's what you're alluding to here, is having this beautiful inherent space that we can go to that almost reflects the elementals and reflects the core nature of who we are, and having the ability to have communion with those things in the comfort of our very home. And that's really, I mean, if we could get there, that would be an absolutely transformative way of living in our own homes, because we would have, right, like in every single room, a direct correlation to one of the core elements of what we are, and almost be reminded of what we can do to live there, in a beautiful way.
Yeah. I'd say that the most important conversation for me right now in my world is, how do I bring more nature through me, even when I'm not in nature? How do I tap into my true nature that's not informed by just mind or any of the other waves that are going on throughout the atmosphere right now? Because there's a lot of energy being generated towards two choices, and those two choices can become one in that divine unio divina, in that divine union. And that to me it does look like a utopian future, but it's not in a way that's not been done before. We've done it before, and it's failed, and we've done it before and it's succeeded. Death isn't
like things like,
death isn't necessarily
Atlantis
something that's right. Something that's bad, but at the same time, we want to be able to see what we can do, what we came here to do, and the only way we can know that is if we listen to what Mother Earth needs as well as what we think we need. I think we need more joy, more fun in our lives, and the only time I really feel that is when I'm outside. And I know that that's not the case for everyone, but I think it could be if we allowed ourselves to enjoy both nature and technology more often. If we're going to use it so much.
Yeah, there's something to be said about being able to balance our nature. There's so many people right now that are advocating for the sort of AI push and all that kind of stuff that fuels all these different types of machines and technologies, and things that are being presented as conveniences, and
there's always a choice,
very well
though,
might be.
You've always got a choice between, do you go outside or do you look at a screen? Do you stay in a concrete wall or do you go for a walk? And the thing is that I don't always do it myself. I don't always go out there, and so it's about advocating for your dreams to happen. That's what I think is the best we can do. If your dream happens to be out in nature, then let's dream towards that more often.
What I think we're both trying to touch on here is this notion that we are human beings themselves. We come from such vast arrays of cultural diversity and maybe even genetic stock and all this kind of stuff, that regardless of that, we are all here as human beings, this flesh and blood, this mind, this body, this spirit, and it connects directly into these elemental grids. And for us to, tread ever further away from those grids by not spending as much time outside, by not getting enough sunlight, by not doing enough recognition of our sort of brethren, by not creating communities around this stuff, we do end up becoming more technified than naturified. And it's so much more like the importance of what that actually means, like for us to come to the importance of of coming to the understanding of what that actually means is super profound. It's one of the light switches that clicked off in my head at one point in my experience. It's that, sure, I may spend time inside houses and things like that, which are largely inventive, and these are sort of technologies in a sense. But we also need to be able to, spend that time either musing on the elements from within, like through prayer, or, and this is better yet, getting outside, just even for a minute. If it just takes a minute, if like you're just going outside just to take a breath and come back in, you're better off than not doing that. And the longer you can extend that minute, the better. If you can spend a whole day outside, that would be awesome. Now, not everybody has the ability to do that, and that's what I mean by the sort of industrial design of things. Some people only get a 15-minute break at work and like a 45-minute lunch hour, or like all these things, like they got to drive to work and stuff. So there's little hacks that you can do to be able to get the most out of nature. Like when I was working in corporate, it was taking that 15-minute break and literally going and standing outside, regardless of the weather, and taking in breaths. It was taking my lunch break outside, eating outside when the weather was permitting for the eating part of it. It was rolling down my window ever so slightly as I was driving, and if there was a big vehicle that was spewing fumes around me, I'd just roll up the windows for that moment and keep it kind of going so I could keep the air fresh within the vehicle for my commute. So it was all those types of things that were so important. Now, out in the countryside, and I'll be honest, you do more of this than I do, especially in these winter months, is getting outside and actually taking some breaths, being part of the ecology and actually participating in with the birds, with the squirrels.
It's my lifeblood. I probably wouldn't be able to survive here without having some nature around me.
Yeah. And the thing about, my talents paired with your talents is that we can actually come up with these ecological designs and frameworks from a perspective of spirit, and from the perspective of the elements, and from the perspective of really designing nature into things, as opposed to designing us out of nature, like protecting ourselves from the great wall of nature. It's more about
developing a relationship with nature.
Yes.
Because that's where we come from.
Yes,
and
yes.
that is there in everyone. When you're a child, you're open to nature. You enjoy having the sun on your face.
Mud in your mouth.
You enjoy putting mud in your mouth.
All these types of things, like eat dirt. Like the whole eat dirt campaign it's real. Like it now again, I mean, people will, flare up about the idea of eating dirt. It's dirty. Well, by nature, if you're, eating the dirt on the side of a highway,
if you knew what it is,
it's different.
It's good for your microbiome.
In the proper
you can think about
permacultural garden
everything
spaces, yes.
differently depending on what perspective you've come to understand.
Yeah. Well, we could get into the dialogue about what real immunity looks like in a real commune system. I like to call it the commune system instead of the immune system, because it's more of a community. And the more people that you have within this community, and the more diversity that you have within this commune system, the more we're able to keep a true homeostasis of the body, a true balance of all the systems of the body going, because, really all of life in the human body starts in the gut. And so if our gut microbiome is solid, if the microbial walls are really
that comes from growing your own food,
among other things. Yeah, absolutely.
Sow and plant your seeds with your own hands. You know exactly where that food has come from.
Yeah, and it's a bit, it's interesting how, niche gardening has become. It seems like it was the one thing that we all did in 1950. I think 70% or something like that, 75%.
But then technology came along and it distracted. And created amazing
conveniences
films, and all of that other stuff that it's been able to connect us
from on the entertainment side. Yeah.
Across the world. It's a tool that can be used in balance, and that's important to hear. That it's used in balance with nature, not instead of.
That's right. Yeah, we don't want to be replacing nature with technology. it's dangerous. Well, I mean, listen, I mean, there's all these tech heads around that are adamant that we are going to go transhuman and all that stuff. Well, they can make that choice, but those of us that really get it, that really get the importance of the natural side, we can start to evolve along that
You
pattern.
can choose
we don't have enough
whatever side
examples
you
of
want.
it.
You
Yeah,
can
that's
choose.
right. Yeah, it's
but
your
you
choice.
want to make sure your choices with your wisest self.
We haven't been given all the options when it comes down to sort of consent, willful consent. And because we don't have the willful consent, like, in medicine, for instance, like if we go for a treatment of some kind, immediately they want to, you have to be able to provide consent in a way that's informed, and it's called informed consent. So you can make a choice. Well, if people don't have all the information to make informed decisions on whether they're going to utilize tech as their primary foundation of life, or whether they're going to, move forward into a position of really claiming their nature and their sovereignty within as a divine organic being, we can't be shown the examples of what that looks like down the road. We've all seen the sci-fi of both sides, though. We've all seen the sort of elvish, non-tech, but sort of quote-unquote magic approach. Well, what if that's because they have an inherent understanding of nature, and they've evolved in a particular way to be able to utilize these different inherent natural functions within their body, like, say, telekinesis or clairvoyance or clairaudience or clairsentience or any of these other remote viewing faculties or things like that.
Yeah, clairaudience. Some of the best thoughts I've ever had entailed this, I don't know if it's a memory or an imagination thought, but being in a garden that's basically covering, like, far beyond what you can see, but being united as a people in that garden. It's like I have a place for that in my heart, as though it's something that I know we can reach. And to me, it just takes knowing exactly why you choose what you choose, whether it be technology, whether it be nature. Why do you want to choose that? And the answer is usually coming with a feeling. It's an instinctual thing that makes sense in the heart as well as the mind.
Well, speaking of something that makes sense in the heart as well as in the mind, why don't you take us through a quick sort of visualization that can sort of give people an actual experience of what we're talking about, so that you can, from a place of mind and then from a place of feeling, really get what it's like to be imbued with a little bit more of your nature self, a bit more of your sort of original intelligence.
Sure, yeah. Well, I'd take you to the ancient house for that then. The ancient house is a place that I've been going to since, I don't know, maybe 8 years ago or something, but I'm pretty sure it existed even before I went there in my imagination. It's actually more of a feeling body space as well as just a imagination, though. So yeah, you walk into this ancient home of yours and you'll notice that every room has a purpose, and this purpose is to aid your self in an experiential or healing moment. So you walk into the house and you see stairs that lead down to the basement, which is your past, and you see stairs leading upward, and they lead to your future. And you notice that there's at least 5 rooms around you, and you turn and you go left into the living room, and in there it's full of warmth, full of softness, luxury. deep earth tones. There's a fire roaring, and there's your spirit animal friend led on the rug, on the couch, wherever he or she wants to be in your mind. And then you go next door into the water room, and it's beautiful basking of cleansing energy through water. It's 4 columns representing 4 directions, north, east, south and west. You get inside of this tranquility pool that lays in the middle of these 4 columns. And you take in the element of water, and it begins to heal you. Everywhere that you ask it to go, it interacts and communicates with that area of cells and skin and muscle and bone and tissue. It's a loving friend almost. And you look out the window and you can see a garden. And so many animals in this garden, and they're all just flourishing with life in the most balanced, beautiful way. Eating, playing, running, chasing. All of the squirrels and the chipmunks and the birds and the bunnies. Maybe even a cat or 2 here or there. Some hawks. They're all there for you, waiting. Just waiting for you to step out, bare feet, so you can feel the heaven that's been created for us in the form of earth. In the elemental experience of this element. These animals are like old friends. Came along this journey with you, and you forgot that they even existed for a while maybe in your life, but now you've remembered. And you come indoors and you see that there's a secret door behind the staircase. And so you enter, and it's a huge library, and it's the element of air that lives there. And you see a circle that represents something you're supposed to stand inside, and stand for a moment and just ask for a book. It's going to help you, guide you in this moment. Maybe it's your life path, maybe it's who really am I, maybe it's what should I do tonight. Whatever book you want to read floats down to your hands now. It gives you wisdom in the form of a few phrases and words, maybe even some symbols. Helps you to focus on something that's important to you right now. Maybe you can take us in to the final ether room.
I'm kind of in a bit of a blissed out state just now, just going through that original vision. But yes, that last room when you walk out of into the hallway and you come up to this beautiful door, and it's ornate, this door. It's a beautiful door. It's almost like fading in and out of existence with different sort of opaque and sort of luminescent colors and stuff. And as this one doesn't open with your hand, it kind of opens with your intention, and you just sort of go through this door. You don't have to open anything. You just it senses your biofield and your intention, and as you walk in, you see it's almost like a sparkly infinity that just sort of exists. Yeah, but it's just so colorful. It's like full of all these luminescent colors, and you can sort of, just at your will, you can conjure anything really.
Using your consciousness.
Just using your consciousness and your imagination, your emergination, you can bring through anything. And for me, it's this beautiful set of the future that is before us. It's a beautiful place, but for you, it might be an adventure or a
studio.
It could be a studio. It could be literally anything that you feel just really beautiful in, that you want to experience your experience ahead of time in. It's like you can...
Dancing.
Anything. It's so yours. It's completely private. It's so full of love and all of the encouragement and wisdom and literally everything that you would ever need to feel absolutely, well, akin to living. If there was something that could feel akin to living in heaven, this would be the place to practice that.
Yeah.
And, really, really involve everything that you would do. You're full of power infinitely. You're like, in a way, kind of like a completely benevolent God in a way. And you're a co-creator extraordinaire. And, just take in the pure bliss and creative inertia and practice of mental imagery and imagination and feeling body and nature and all of it, all in one place. It's a fantastic feeling. And
yeah, maybe the animals in the house come to rest and play in there too.
Yeah, well, because their consciousness interacts in a way with the space as well. So it's like anything that comes into the ether room sort of
animals just make me feel good, personally.
Yeah, they definitely do. There's something about their energy field and stuff, so bringing them in any room, in fact, can help to be that sort of nurturing, healing friend, so to speak, in the room, energy in the room. So... yeah, and then, and that's, the gardens are completely phenomenal, and they're sort of, like when you go out into the gardens of this mansion, it's sort of it's the living example of what happens when the elementals begin to converse with themselves and listen to the ether room and everything that's going on in there, and, really begin a dynamic, evolutionary process of co-creation. And, you see trees and forest and the different types of insects and leaves. And if you could see the microbiology, you'd see them all just teeming with information and,
space of love.
Yeah, it's truly a space of love. Like everything is operating in the most, loving and wise and peaceful way possible.
Integral, honest, whole way possible.
Yeah.
I guess we said everything we wanted to say about nature and technology. Is there anything else you wanted to say before we...
No, not particularly. This is a good introduction. What we could do is maybe narrow down a few other things, like drill down on very specific rooms and things like that in future episodes, practice speaking of our daily routines, what we came up with.
So experiencing kind of like a living meditation through this original intelligence, through space of love, ancient house kind of thing, you mean?
Yeah, among any other kind of metaphorical but very living visualizations that we would...
Well, what else do people listen to podcasts for, Usually it's just to listen to something else other than your own voice for a while, and when it can be meditative and mindful and rooted in what you yourself love, if it's nature paired with that technological understanding of what it can really do for us, then that's what this podcast will be about.
It's perfect. Original intelligence, whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
It can be meditative. It will be conversative.
Like versus AI.
Yeah,
it's not really versus.
More like it's like
equal. But
OI births things like AI.
It does. It doesn't go the other way around. But who knows? Right.
There's conditions within which AI can thrive, and there's conditions within which AI does not thrive. It's that simple. And I don't feel...
vice versa with nature. It doesn't thrive when there's honking buildings everywhere and
there's
skies.
Correct. Yes, absolutely. And it's being able to come to that and do that. And, having specific conversations around those things so that there is a bit more of just a thinking. Let's just think about it a little bit more.
What it looks like to live with that original intelligence. What it feels like, what it means. It's the conversation that's important.
Yeah, both listening to it, in situations like this, but also having that conversation within oneself whilst out in nature. I think that's probably the number one most important thing. Training ourselves how to, wherever we are, be consistently in this, in a sense, it's like a space of prayer, a space of nature-driven awareness in a place of prayer, so to speak. The word prayer is a challenging word because so many people have different visions of what that actually is, but prayer being that intention body, really going in.
Looking for the synchronicities in life. Feeling into them when you're making a list of the things that you're grateful for,
Grateful. That's a good word. Synchronicity, good word. Because these are things that when we embody them and act out of them, there's so much that can happen in that organic world. Internally, our mind and our heart are so important in the way that we navigate the world. And when we can have those synchronistic and grateful outlooks, it changes the way we look at the world in a big way, in a profound way, in a way that starts to feel more magical, so to speak, or at least intentional. Yeah. It's almost like there's,
Lifeblood.
How did that do that?
Keeps you alive. It kept me alive, seeing the beauty of nature.
More than that.
Feeling the beauty of nature, talking about the beauty of nature, and navigating this consciousness with a spiritual evolution. That being my road marker as to where I want to go. Spiritually evolved, organically whole. Eating right, speaking right, thinking right, acting right. All comes down to a choice. It's not always easy to make that choice, but we all are here to make a choice, and that's all that we can really come together and do, is make choices, make good choices together. As a people, as an individual, as a partner, as a friend. There's no better choice than nature, in my opinion.
Well, that definitely is a statement to let ring. What does it look like? How does it feel?
So thanks so much for listening, and we hope that you enjoyed this podcast speaking session, and you can expect to hear some more from this Original Intelligence podcast with Kim and Eddie, and
AKA Miss Synchronicity and the SymbioGaian.
That's right, yeah, those are our avatars. So if you want to come back and say hello, please do.
Cheers, folks. Chat again soon.